George Kilpatrick, Inspiration for the Nation. Pleased to be joined by Charles Anderson, a veteran lawmaker in the community, historian, TV host, you name it. He's done a lot in this community, former Syracuse City Councilor, and he's here to talk to us about the first principle of Kwanzaa, which is unity, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. And Charles Anderson, so good to see you as always. And so what is unity meant for you?
Well, when I look at the principle where they say it speaks to the needs of to develop and sustain a sense of oneness, of righteousness, rightful togetherness in small and large circles and significant relations to our lives, from family to friendship to community and the cosmos, and in everyday life, especially in the midst of what's going on now,
right?
It seems that unity is very difficult to come by. Mm-hmm. It just makes it very difficult. Mm-hmm. But people have to understand that in order to get anything done, they have to be unified.
Right.
Principles. So it's interesting because, I'm in 3 organizations like the 100 Black Men of Syracuse, Power Robeson Performing Arts Company, and the Pan-African Community of Central New York. And these are people, from many different statuses in life, and they're all in organizations, and they have to be unified around a particular theme or purpose that they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And sometimes it's not easy, with everything else that's going on, to bring people together to talk about what they want to achieve, not necessarily for themselves, but for the community.
Why has that been so important to you as a function of unity? Yeah. Why has that been so important to you?
Yeah. I grew up on a farm in Virginia, in the midst of intense segregation. And we had to survive and be united and overcome that, to, go to college and get jobs and things, the situation that we grew up in. And I think we learned a lot from that you have to believe in other people and be unified with them as a community to be able to do things, because Black people went all to the same schools and the same churches and organizations, and coming north, you were thrown out of that. So you have to use the principles and things that you learned growing up to confront what we have to deal with now.
Charles Anderson, Ujima, to strive for and maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Habaragani, Ujima. This sister we feel real good about. Jackie Grace is a griot. She's an author. She's living on Grace Mountain in the foothills. I don't know if you call them the foothills. Well, it's a mountain in Tennessee. That's where she living. But we're so happy to have her. And for Syracusans, we know Jackie is an educator, a retired educator, many years in the community, educating our children, educating her babies, former entrepreneur for Grace Children's Academy, but sister's doing her thing, and we have her to welcome as we celebrate Kwanzaa. With that big build up, Jackie, what does Kwanzaa mean to you?
Before I start, let me just thank you so much, George, for reaching out to me. And we seem to do this every year, and I look forward to it. So thank you so much, and much success for all that you do in terms of bringing media, bringing voices to the community. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
In terms of Kwanzaa, I've been celebrating Kwanzaa for a number of years, and I love being able to say that I try really hard to implement the Kwanzaa principles in my life throughout the year. I think that the principles are so applicable, that they're doable. That's something that we should do
Mm.
anyway. And it actually makes us a better, more conscious person in terms of everything that we do. We're doing it for our people, for our community, for our nation. And so every principle. I really give the Dr. Maulana Karenge just kudos for implementing or thinking of principles that we can use every single day in our lives. So every one that you just mentioned, George, I try in some kind of way to practice that, to put that to practice in my life.
All right, let's talk about Kujichagulia, to define ourselves, name ourselves, and create for ourselves and speak for ourselves. And if you can't remember all of that, what I love this book by Deborah Newton Chocolate. It's for kids. That's her name, Deborah Newton Chocolate, and it's basically it simplifies what the principles mean. And so for Umoja, it's simply we work together, and for Kujichagulia, it's simply we define ourselves. So there you go. Talk to me, sister.
Yes. And, as I was thinking, as you were talking, George, I'm trying to say, okay, what do I do with Coochie Dakalia? Well, um, when it comes to the names
Mm-hmm.
that we give ourselves, the names that we give our children, we try to give names that mean something, that actually have a wonderful, uh, inspirational meaning, one that inspires one to be, you know. And so for us to look at that and say, I'm not going to let anyone call me out of my name. I'm not going to let anyone call me, a derogatory name. I'm going to tell them what I want them to call me. So I think name how it is that we name our children. I mean, I had a student in one of my schools whose name was Your Highness.
Mm.
I love it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you get people say, oh, those are some crazy names. Not when it is that you look at what the parent is trying to do, trying to elevate and
Yes.
trying to inspire and trying to plant seeds, in their child so that they can aspire to be. So I think us defining ourselves, us naming ourselves, and not letting anyone else do that, how important that is. So just coming from the concept or the idea of Negro to
Mm-hmm.
Black to African American, right? And so all those different stages of knowing is what all that's about. And we are at a point now where we know, hopefully, prayerfully, know who we are and knows whose we are, and that we are connected to a greater mankind. So I think it should empower us. It should give us promise. It should give us hope.
Amen. Are you preaching up in here, sister? You preaching. That the colors for Kwanzaa are red, black, and green. Jackie, what do the colors mean, my sister?
Oh, red is for the blood that we've shed, for our people and for our freedom. Black is for our people. And the green is for our land, our homeland, and the land that we now are trying to acquire. So
Amen.
red, black, and green.
There you
Yes.
go. That the Ujima is the third day of Kwanzaa collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our community together and to make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and solve them together. And of course, we are living the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, inviting individuals within the community to talk about how these principles will live not only for them, but for us as a community. We're pleased to be joined by Baye Muhammad. He is the CEO of the Rochester Economic Development Corporation. Baye, it's so good to see you and talk about Kwanzaa.
Yes, how you doing, George? And thanks for having me on.
Oh, appreciate you, Baye. So when we talk about Ujima, collective work and responsibility, this third principle of Kwanzaa, what does it mean to you?
I mean, what it means to me is working together, and that's particularly with like minds. Trying to get 1,000 or 2,000, 3,000 people sometimes is a hard task. So trying to connect with like minds. And for me, growing up as a child, service to the community was always number one. So whether that I was at my grandparents' house or my house, we were always volunteering, cleaning the neighborhood up. My mom had this belief when we rented a home, and she used to send me out there to clean in front of the street. She said, "Look, we live here. Even though we don't own this home right now, it's still your community." And I use that into my life, raising my children. They used to ask me the same question: why are we doing this? But we live here, and we have to work with the community, whether people are doing it or not. We have to be the example, and others will come along. George.
It's funny you should say that, because that is what makes communities stronger, right? But it also makes us stronger as family. You talked about how these are values that you wanted to place on your kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, I learned a lot from my parents. And, when I was younger, I didn't really know until I got to be an adult. And even now, I reflect on what they continue to teach me, what they taught me, and I feel a sense of responsibility, and I always have, to the community I'm living in and the community abroad, to be that example. I mean, I'm not a perfect human being by no stretch, but service has always been number one.
So what does it take to maintain our community? What do you think it takes?
Collective action, collective ideas. But that key word is action. Mm-hmm. I took down a few little notes. I mean, we have to really be involved in areas that interest us. Everybody's not interested in politics, but politics affects your everyday. Being involved with the schools, the PTA, the school board, a lot of things people don't think about. The planning commission, a lot of activity happening right now in Syracuse. But a lot of it was teed up years ago, 10 years ago. But economic development plan, it takes time. So right now you have 81, and people should be front and center, with that project, what's going on, because your voice actually does matter. If you shake the tree, you complain or you constructively do that, things can change, and everybody plays a different role. I might not be marching in the middle of the street, but I'm going to be in City Hall. The other person's going to be marching in the street. So really respecting those roles too. Everybody doesn't have to play the same role. But the thing is, let's get the job done, for the people.
Oh, man. Baye, you said something really critical there. It's almost, so we have to also, it's almost like the analogy, men always go to sports analogies. I don't know what the, right? You basically say is we all have a position, right?
Yes.
So if it's a basketball analogy, somebody's point, somebody's center, and everybody has a role to play up. It's, and sometimes the action doesn't happen because we haven't strategized beforehand,
right,
to know, okay, so if you're in City Hall, what do you need? What can you help us to understand and know so that we can come to the planning commission armed and equipped to get the information and knowledge, or to challenge the information and knowledge that's being presented? How can you help us to do that? If you're inside, if you're outside, mm-hmm. What is the pressure you have to put on to get what's needed? Connecting it back to what we say about collective work and responsibility, as a CEO in that position, you're seeing your role as to making sure that our communities have that information. So what do they need to know?
Businesses in particular, or just
community, businesses? What do people need to know? However you want to answer that.
That's a good question. That there are resources here.
Okay.
There are. There are many resources here, but getting access to those are the barriers we're breaking down. So the city has resources for small businesses and large businesses. The county does as well. And there are other nonprofits, just like Redco in Syracuse, that can support business. But you, as a business owner, you have to be involved and you have to seek out the information.
To bring this around, you said something that really struck me, and I want to just make sure people heard you. You said that my council member has the information, and whether they share that or make sure that you're aware of that is another story. So that begs the question, or basically, the challenge is you need to know who's representing you and make sure that they get the information to the community. That's what you're basically putting. You used to be a commissioner of parks here in the city.
Yes.
And so, city of Syracuse. So you're saying, listen, hold them accountable. Ask them to tell you what's going on and keep you in the loop.
We need to stop just checking a box just because somebody's a Democrat or Republican.
All right, now.
Find out what they want to do, and we have to hold each person accountable. I mean, that's part of my job. I don't mind being held accountable. But yes, they do have the information, and they should be seeking the information, but they also need help.
Okay.
They don't know everything. When you take a position like that, and even when I was a commissioner, you don't get a manual. It's on the job training. I wish you did. When I was there, I worked on standard operation procedures and stuff like that. I had all the departments do that because I said, I don't want anybody to come in after me and start from square one. It's hard work, and day one, you get a phone call. I don't know if they have an orientation. They might, maybe they do now, but they need help too, and they need cover sometimes. So as they're challenging sometimes the mayor or the county exec, we got to give them cover. Don't let, if you support your elected official and you believe they are good, back them up. When they say, come to the meeting, I need you to speak up on that. We got to go. We got to go or send somebody.
Yeah. That's what collective work and responsibility looks like to me. If we're going to rebuild our community. We continue our series celebrating Kwanzaa. This is day 4, Ujamaa, Cooperative Economics, to build and maintain our stores, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together as we celebrate Kwanzaa. And so what we've decided to do, as you have been noticing, is we have invited leaders within the community to share their thoughts about the Kwanzaa principles and how to make those Kwanzaa principles real in our life. We're pleased to be joined by Davine Bey, Head of Talent Management at Syracuse University, also a consultant with organizations helping them with their workforce needs. Davine, good to see you as always.
Good to see you as well, George. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Davine, this topic in particular was very important to you. Why?
Well, George, it's a great question because I think that we are at such an important point in our history as African Americans, as Black folk in this country, and we're making tremendous gains. Right, there are more African American entrepreneurs that are emerging. Black wealth is increasing, and as a result, there are just some things that I just observed anecdotally that I felt that I wanted to kind of weigh in on as we continue this upwardly mobile progress.
Yeah, and of course, cooperative economics is one way that we're going to build wealth in our communities. All right, so what's on your mind, brother? Let's go.
Yeah, so, the thing that I really just wanted to focus on during this conversation, George, was how we value one another, especially and in particular when it comes to Black economics. And, when I think about that, I think about, the mom and pop entrepreneurs that I grew up with growing up in Harlem. I think about all the successful businesses and friends that I've known that have built successful businesses. But the one thing that seems to be a common thread that I hear from those individuals and I've experienced myself, is this sometimes this sense of devaluing each other in the marketplace. And let me give you an example of that. So let's say my good friend, George Kilpatrick, decides to open up a bakery here in town, and you're selling your grandmother's sacred sweet potato pie recipe for $10 a pie, right? Am I on mute? Oh.
Right. No, you're good.
Yeah. So, and so as a friend of George Kilpatrick, when I enter your store, the price of your $10 pie for Davine Bey is $10, right?
Correct.
I should not come to you and say, hey, where's the hookup? Or can you help me out? Right?
Right.
Your price is the price. And sometimes, I just watch how, sometimes people get offended by that, right? It's like, well, as if almost, there's this expectation that because the product is coming from you, that somehow intrinsically that translates that you should be reducing the value of your product and charging me a lesser price because.
Meanwhile, so in that context, but I'll go around the corner and pay double to somebody else, right? Break it down, brother. Right.
Exactly. And then go to another merchant who not part of our community, don't haggle and will pay the full price.
Right. As I was thinking about that, this idea of valuing and how do we not only value our stuff, but also place value on it. And is that part of this? Okay, what comes up for me, maybe this is too heavy, too deep for what we're talking about, but I get this internalized oppression kind of thing, like even to the point that do I even feel like I'm worth that? Is that along the lines of what you're thinking as well, or am I somewhere off in another planet?
Well, it's a great, question, George, and I'm certainly not a anthropologist or expert in that area. Right? I know my lane. But I would say that there's probably a lot of truth to what you're saying. I think that we have grown up in a society that doesn't place a lot of value on people who look like you and I. Mm-hmm. And we have learned those behaviors, and we evoke those behaviors onto ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that there's some historical reference on that. But I also think that there are people who understand that context and who are fighting against that. And this is not an aspersion on anyone. I think we've all been guilty of it. I mean, everyone wants a hookup, right? Everyone wants to pay, but
you asked the question, right? You asked the question.
Right, exactly. But I do think that we are at a point where we really have to put our money where our mouths are and begin to support our communities as other communities support their communities. And there's nothing wrong about that. There's nothing racist or wrong about that. That's just people circulating their dollars among their communities and raising the standard of living for the communities.
No, I really appreciate that. So when you think about that, you grew up in a community in Harlem, New York City, and certainly
all of in a house.
Represent, right? And so how do we, as a Black community in particular, and these are the folks that I'm talking to, Davine, how do we as a Black community use this concept of cooperative economics, Ujamaa, to build wealth in our communities? We're this conversation is originating from Syracuse, New York, for example, and the over the years trying to center a community that will prosper has been challenging because of the high poverty rate in this particular community and the efforts underway to reverse that and to build a wealth legacy within our community, or at least a prosperous community. So how do you see this playing out in this idea and this concept of Ujamaa cooperative economics?
I think it's a multi-pronged approach, George. I believe that one, we have to be very intentional about how and where we spend our dollar. And what I mean by that is, seeking out those who look like us. I think that we have to be mindful that there may be some of that historical residue that exists within our minds. So as we're approaching and dealing with one another, we have to be able to unpack that and be aware of that, right? It's kind of, it's that unconscious, thing that's buried deep in, but we know it comes somewhere. But I think the other end is true too. I think as a Black business owner, right, we have an obligation to step it up and to reinvest our resources back into our businesses to make our businesses attractive. And if we're going to charge a fair market price for what we deliver, then our services as Black business owners should also be on par with our counterparts as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's a both and, expect to be compensated fairly, but also deliver what you say you're going to deliver in a fair way. And I know that these concepts are important to you. We've seen when we identify and invest in our communities, there's evidence that this can work, right? We just have to be very intentional about it, as you said, to make that happen. And to me, it's very simple. Buy Black, right? And people say, well, when they hear that, they say, well, what is that discriminatory against other businesses? Well, it didn't say buy only Black. It just said buy Black, right?
Right.
And I'll give you an example. I remember I have a friend, and he's a Greek heritage, and he was taking me around to meet different people. Everybody was Greek. There wasn't any there was no apology. There was like, and this is this, and this is where I'm going to go, and this is where we're going to get this, and we're going to get that. Everybody, there was no apology for that. And so if our communities are going to prosper, we got to spend that money within our communities without apologies, and not saying that you're not going to buy other things everywhere else, because you need everything. You need some things from, and it doesn't matter. You're spreading the wealth, but at least start at home, is what we're saying. I guess is what I'm suggesting. Your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's a great point, George. And what I would add, as a Black business owner, I wouldn't only limit my services to Black people, right?
Right.
Because you're a very niche market, right? It's about competing in the marketplace.
In the marketplace,
and
right.
It's about competing in the marketplace. It's about understanding your marketplace.
Right.
Syracuse, New York, we do grapple with issues of poverty, but we have a pretty decent, sustainable middle and upper income, community that's here. Which there's a book called Black is the New Green.
Mm-hmm.
And the author refers to this population of Black folk as the triple A's. What's a triple A? Affluent African American, affluent African American.
Oh, yeah. Affluent African, yeah.
And an affluent African American household has an income of over $150,000.
Okay.
Well, there are a lot of triple A's in town, and there's room to create more. I think the other thing that I would say, because oftentimes out here, well, Syracuse is not New York. Very true. Apples and oranges, right? Most places are not like New York City. New York is very unique. But what I will say is that where Syracuse is at today, they're at the precipice of their journey and redevelopment. That's where Harlem was 30 years ago. Right. That's where the Bronx was 30 years ago, right? That's where Brooklyn was and other major cities. So the playbook has already been played out for us, today. And now we have an opportunity to really bring that institutional knowledge, bring those lessons learned to this community that we now call home.
Davine Bey, director of head. He said head. I'm just going to use that term, head of talent management at Syracuse University, and of course a consultant who works with individual workforce development. Anything else we need to know? Well, no, I shouldn't say anything else. So, what's our takeaway from today? What are folk going to do to actualize Ujamaa in our community going forward? What's your recommendation and suggestion?
My recommendation is let's deal with each other with grace, right? Let's be intentional how we spend our resources among each other. and let's always strive to deliver excellence as Black business owners.
Fifth day of Kwanzaa, we celebrate Nia, or purpose, to make our collective vocation the building and developing of our community in order to restore our people to their traditional greatness. We're pleased to be joined by Evelyn Ingram, and she's got a few projects up her sleeve that she probably will talk about in just a few moments, but we've invited leaders in the community to share their thoughts about Kwanzaa and living the Kwanzaa principles. Evelyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you, George. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time.
Always good to have you on. Go ahead. You gonna say?
So,
yes.
No, I'm just happy to be here. It's nice during these trying times that we've been facing and so many different challenges that we've experienced personally, professionally. It's just nice to be able to share a great conversation about some principles that we know will really help us as we move forward in life.
All right. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
I will. My name is Evelyn Ingram. I serve as the Director of Community Engagement for Wegmans Food Markets, and I'm also the co-owner of an upcoming project called The Castle, which is rehabilitation of a historic church on the south side of Syracuse. So kind of a couple of different hats that I'm wearing today, but hopefully we'll be able to share information about both.
Sure. So let's talk, and I should also say Wegmans is a great partner of inspiration for the nation. Let's talk about Nia and purpose and that Kwanzaa principle and how you see that showing up for you.
Well, it's funny, George, because as we were talking and we were trying to figure out, what principle may be best for me to share about, and we came up with purpose, Nia. And it's funny because I don't think I've said this to many. I love the name Nia. And I had said if I had a daughter, that would definitely have been an option as far as her name is concerned. So I'm able to kind of have that connection as well. But when you talk about, Nia, and I was kind of reading about it, and really it has purpose, and it's really more not necessarily just individual purpose, but collaborative purpose.
Yes.
I mean, really people working together to come together to bring something to fruition. And it's really, what is that purpose? So I really like that aspect of it, because when I think about some of the things that have occurred in my life and some of the instances that I've had or experiences that I've had, it really deals with collaboration and teamwork and bringing people or things together to fulfill a purpose or a mission. And when I think about actually both of the roles I described, both at Wegmans and also at the Castle, there's so much time with that, so many implications with that. And, I really like the fact of being in a position that I can have purpose and have meaning. So I'm really kind of tying to that because I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when we chatted, I was like, no, you, Nia, I like that for you. Right. And I didn't know that there was this connection to the name. And so thinking about what you do from a community building standpoint, Wegmans has a large footprint, obviously, in Central New York, but also now expanding in other parts of the country. And you get to help communities in Syracuse fulfill the purposes that they have for different things and different projects, and that is as exciting as that is. I'm sure that also is challenging because you can't do everything for everyone, or you can't meet everybody's needs, but you try to do what you can.
It's funny, George, because sometimes I don't think people understand that we can't do everything for everyone, but we try to make the most of our resources and do as much as we can. And we really try to focus our giving on what we consider our giving priorities. And there are many occasions where we get, great projects, but it really doesn't fit with our mission. But we try. But you're right. I mean, I think what I love and what I find most fulfilling about my role is that I'm able to help people, help organizations fulfill their mission. And that's really important because a lot of times organizations may have vision, they have mission, but they don't have the resources to do what they need to fulfill those vision and mission. So I feel like my purpose is to help these organizations do that. And I say it with a strong commitment to helping all organizations, but in particularly organizations of color, because I recognize the many challenges that these organizations may face. So with that, I'll say we definitely help many organizations from churches and, all the various community centers and things like that in our area. And the more we do, the more we get asked to do. So I'm really challenged with trying to, do what I can to help, but helping people understand that, there are some limitations even to Wegmans. I think people feel like Wegmans, you got it, Wegmans can do it. And we try hard, but it's really trying to make sure we're helping everybody. But I think for me, I do feel like part of the purpose of my role and being in this role is to help smaller organizations, to help organizations of color, to help, us do the things that we need assistance doing. And not that we don't support all organizations, we most certainly do, we absolutely do. But obviously, as an African-American female in my role, I have a special, love to support people of color. So I work hard to try to do that. And, I think oftentimes, it does serve as a kinship, with people, with me being in the role and being a woman of color, right now, actually, having a high level position within the Wegmans, food chain and being able to help. So I really take that seriously. And I always say I'm going to do everything I can while I have the power to do it to help organizations, and particularly those organizations of color.
I appreciate that, and the community appreciates you doing that, and thinking of then connecting that back to your own personal vision, right? Because I'm sure when you announced that, you were like, well, Wegmans were like, so you're gonna do what? How did they react to that? Yeah,
it's funny. They were very supportive, and I mean, I made sure that I let the regional staff here know what was going on to make sure that they were on board with it, and they've been very supportive, even to the point of my immediate manager has said to me, she's a senior VP of operations, and she was like, Evelyn, whatever we can do to help, if you need me to send some employees to kind of, help tear down some things or whatever, just let us know. But they've been very supportive, and, looking forward to a continued partnership with them as we continue on the progress of our project. But I think there's actually a tie, George, because I feel my role has purpose. My role at Wegmans has purpose, trying to help organizations and trying to help them fulfill their mission. But I also feel my role with the castle has purpose. Okay. And I think that that's really kind of a tie, because both in my role at Wegmans, my role at the castle, we're going to be helping people. We're going to be supporting agencies and supporting organizations, again, to help them fulfill their mission. Now, obviously, the castle does have a generational wealth component, which I'm excited about. It has a legacy building component, which I'm excited about. But it has a strong economic development component to help our community, to help build up the south side of Syracuse, to help let Syracuse, the south side, be what we know it has a potential to be. And I believe that the castle has a pivotal role in that transformation of that area. So, again, I feel it's purpose. And I will say, and I've shared, I'm at an age where I've been looking, for retirement. I love my role at Wegmans. I love what I do, but obviously I want to be able to enjoy life as well. So as I started looking at the castle, retirement is nowhere in sight.
I was going to say, you ain't talking about the retirement running. And describe for people what the castle is, because we can't assume that people know.
Right, exactly. So the castle actually is a project that we've named the castle, and it's going to be the renovation of what was formerly known as the South Presbyterian Church at 2110 South Salina Street on the corner of South Salina and Colvin. It's a very, vibrant corridor. There's Beecham Libraries across the street. So is Key Bank, and to our right is a post office. So really looking to uplift that corner. And what the project is literally is a renovation and restoration of that property. It will have 3 uses. One will be an event center where we're looking to bring in special events, wedding receptions, galas, conferences, things like that. Concerts, national celebrity artists coming to perform at the castle. The other aspect of it will be a lounge. So a networking lounge, you can come after work, enjoy some appetizers and drinks, just to kind of have an atmosphere where professionals can gather in a very environment that really is uplifting, sophisticated, full of style, just again, to have some networking and interaction with professionals. Looking forward to that. And the third component is actually a training center. So we're looking to bring different training opportunities, into the castle that will enable us to provide training, job fairs, health fairs, just any types of training that will help enhance our people. So, and actually with that, we actually have also started a foundation, the Ingram Castle Foundation, so to really help us with that. But really, the building is huge, George. It's over 30,000 square feet. Every time we go into the building, we find a new room. It's a huge project, right now estimated to cost $8 million. We're working with the local architectural firm here called King & King, who is working with us to design the project. But I will say we're very excited about it, really wanting the community to come together. And part of our vision is to allow nonprofit organizations to host one meeting per month at the castle free of charge. Because you and I both know organizations are always trying to find meeting space.
Right.
We don't always have a lot of money to be able to pay for meeting space. So one of our intentions is for the castle to be an opportunity or an option for a lot of our organizations to have host their monthly meetings there. So huge project. But again, I do feel like its purpose goes back to Nia, George, because, literally, like I said, we could have on our road to retirement, enjoying life in another way, but we really feel called to do this project. My husband Chino actually grew up, right in the neighborhood of the church.
That's the generational piece, right? Or
exactly. That's the generational piece. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That and also, a generation from, my legacy. I have a son, and hopefully, he'll kind of take the mantle and move forward with it. So it's really, just trying to do something that's going to uplift our community. And we know the potential of the South Side. We know other projects are now kind of looking at the South Side and are doing things there to help enhance that area. So the castle will be, another one of those projects that's really looking to bring people together, bring all people together, but really providing some economic, vitality to that area. We have a lot of nonprofits and things like that there, but really having some viable businesses there is what we're looking to do.
But we got a superstar in the house. We're celebrating Kwanzaa, and this is the celebration of the 6th day of Kwanzaa. And of course, the 6th day of Kwanzaa is Kuumba, to do always as much as we can in the way we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. And I could not think of one better person to celebrate Kuumba or to talk about what that means as none other than visual artist extraordinaire, MacArthur Fellow genius, Carrie Mae Weems. Carrie, so let's talk about Kuumba and creativity and how your work and how your how you challenge us to look at life, to look at race, to look at gender, to really, and also your work in the community and how you use that principle in your life. Talk to me, Carrie.
Oh my God. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with Kuumba and how you use Kuumba and how Kuumba reflects and relates to you.
Well, George, one of the things that I appreciate about you are the questions that you ask. So it's really put me in a space of reflection and consideration. I think as an artist, as a woman, as an artist, and as a person who's deeply curious, I've always thought that from the very beginning, early on in my life as an artist, that I knew that the field was much bigger than I, much larger than me, and that the most important thing that I could do would be to ask certain kinds of questions, not necessarily answer them all, because that's impossible, but to ask certain kinds of critical questions that would land us in a certain kind of space of reflection and consideration. And so I think that, from the very beginning of my career, I've started in that way. If we're saying that we want to leave the field in our communities and life better than we found it.
Yes.
Then what does that mean? What does that mean tangibly? Not as an abstract, but tangibly. And so I knew that one of the things that I wanted to do very early was to have a serious impact on the way in which visual arts, photography, painting, sculpture, performance, and music, etc., were understood and understood in the ways in which Black people in particular participated in the field. And not only participated in the field, but how they were actually broadening the field by their participation, right? You know, so what are they doing? How are they doing it? How are they thinking about it? What are they making? What are they saying about it? Who's showing it? Who's engaging it? Who's writing about it? How's it being taught? How's it being shown in institutions and museums? How's it being taught in colleges, in universities, and schools, right? We're really, really hunkering down in that space and asking all of these critical questions. And so no matter where I went, I always had a set of questions that I posed not only for myself, first and foremost, because that's the most important part, starting with you, starting with the self, and then how does that feed out and pan out from the self, right? And so going into universities and institutions and asking them questions about who we are, what we are, how they're engaging. For instance, the question, the similar question that I began to ask myself in 1985 was that was the question of what would it mean for the quote minority to become the majority in the country? What would that mean? And I started talking about that a long time ago. And now in 2021, 2022, by 2025, we know that America will be primarily a country that has shifted from white to Black and varying shades of brown, and that this is having extraordinary implications and will have extraordinary implications into the future.
And so when I'm listening to you, and I always feel myself being expanded, I think what you're challenging us to do in this idea of Kuumba creativity is to think differently about the way we approach things, or don't look at the status quo. That's kind of what I get from you. Am I on the track here?
I think that that's true. I think that's true. But I think that the future is now. The future in some ways belongs to us in a very critical way. How do we use it? How do we engage it? How do we think about it? And within that is this nexus of creativity that is explosive, that is taking the world by storm. Suddenly, institutions that I've been talking to for the last 35 years, 40 years, about this sort of shift, this demographic shift that is going to have deep implications for them, right? And so they need to be prepared for the coming of this day. Well, these words were coming out of the mouths of a Black woman. So who listens to Black women in these sort of primary institutions? There was no need to. They didn't understand it. They didn't see that it was possible. And they didn't care.
Right.
Right? Because they couldn't imagine that a future without themselves in a dominant position.
But at the same time, you never stopped asking the question.
And
right?
I never stopped asking.
And I really want to push into that a little bit, because I think in order for us to make our communities better, sometimes we get comfortable with the questions we already asked without considering, as you just suggest, asking the implications of what is next, or continuing to, I'm still going to ask, I'm still going to ask, I'm still going to ask. We still need the answer. And then one day, here we are, right? A question you asked back in 1985. Now we're seeing what so many years later, the implications of that. So what does it take for us to continue to be persistent in that truth, right? Because it also has to be a level of, I'm not going to let this go, because this is what I believe is critical.
I've often heard for many years, I heard from people after I might present a lecture or an exhibition or a performance, or, of how courageous I was.
Right.
And I think for a long time, I really didn't understand what they were really saying, because I didn't really think of it as being courageous. I simply thought of it as being obvious.
Right.
Simply obvious. But sometimes, of course, asking the obvious question is the thing that gets a lot of people in trouble. And so I think that, one of the things that I try, I'm not a martyr by any means. I'm just a woman. I'm just a woman out here working in the world. But I do have very deep commitments. And I feel a great sense of responsibility, not only to myself, but to the communities that I represent, and to my family and to my friends, to stand on that ground of criticality, and know that it may not advance me, it may not advance my career, it may even hurt my career. And I'm probably sure that in some ways it has, in ways that I don't even understand or could even imagine, right? Because power is not something that rests so comfortably within my hands. But nevertheless, I'm committed to certain kinds of ideas and pushing for what I believe in. And if I look across the spectrum of great artists, all of them have done the same thing. I was actually looking last night at the Kennedy Center Awards, and Berry Gordy was awarded last night. And in his presentation, he talked about Marvin Gaye's album, his particular album of What's Going On.
What's going on?
And when Berry first heard it, he thought, Marvin, this is going to ruin your career. You really need to think about whether or not you really want to put out this album. And Marvin was insistent that this album be produced, and that Berry produce it, and that it go into the public. And we now know, 30 years later, that it reshaped the musical imagination, and that it became one of the most important anthems.
Right.
It became the entire album became one of the most important anthems of the last 50 years. There's nothing greater.
This is the final installment, the 7th day of Kwanzaa. We celebrate Imani. And of course, the principle of Imani says to believe with all our hearts in our people, our parents, our teachers, our leaders, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. Imani means faith. And we're pleased to be joined by Angela Douglas. Can we call you an author now, a trainer, co-director of Vera House, to talk about Imani and faith in her life and what it means for you as well? Good morning, Angela.
Good morning. That actually now is, George, all 18 of us are best-selling authors.
Isn't that right? Congratulations. So tell us about this book, by the way.
Yeah, so Ardenae Gardner has authored, she's the visionary author of this anthology book, Stand Up, Resilient Black Women, that is all about our faith, actually, and about our journeys and our struggles. So exactly what you're talking about, which I hadn't connected before until you had just mentioned it, really connects with the book. Each of us have our own chapter articulating challenges in our life, where I think what Imani really is about is not only the faith from our God, our creator, the one that we see, but also the faith that what was put inside of us is so strong that when it connects with what our parents and our ancestors and also our family and those who really care about us, when all of that sort of comes together synergistically, then faith is unstoppable. And I think the 18 authors are a real representation of that. And that's what the book is.
And so the book, again, what's the name of the book?
It is called Stand Up, Resilient Black Women Shaping the World with Their Faith. And you can get it at my website at horriblybeautiful.com.
There you go. So let's talk about one of the reasons why we're doing this series, and this you get the last word, right? This is Imani, the last
Yes.
word. And I
Thank
thought
you.
about you for this particular principle of Kwanzaa, because what we're doing is helping individuals live the 7 principles. You know, we talk about what they are, and a lot of people don't know what to do. How do I do it? Do I light a candle? Do I not light a candle? All of those things. So we're giving people practical ways that this can show up in their life every day, in various ways throughout the year. And I thought about you having been aware of part of your own journey and how Imani or faith has played a part in that. Why don't you enlighten the rest of the audience about some of the things that I think that make you certainly resilient in this way, talking about faith?
Yeah, thank you so much, George, always for having me on. And I am just really hopeful that what you said would be true. And that would be that people would be able to live out faith in real practical terms. It's not some ethereal, supernatural, unable to acquire, but it is a very real, tangible thing. So in 2017, I was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. I did that journey. It was quite a difficult one, but at the same time, that was where my faith really was cemented. In fact, the thing that I said was, if all of the things I've read, all of the things that I have heard about faith, if they're all true at this moment in my life, then it must, just what you said, become practical. Is there a way I can live out my faith in my God, my faith in what I have been taught, my faith in understanding that really collective is ever greater than even an individualistic way of living, which is really what we're talking about. And so within a year, all of the cancer was gone. And then because it was stage 4, they had put me on some maintenance chemotherapy. But in December of 2020, it came back in 2 scans that the stage 4 breast cancer had returned, and it had returned to my lung. And that was just one of the locations. And so I think, like anyone, practically, I was pretty devastated. I was like, how can this be? I really do have like a deep, staunch faith. I believe that I am healed. I believe that I am well. I believe that my family and my friends collectively care. I care for them. How could this really happen to me? And so, I think all of us have to be there for a minute, right? I think this is where false faith comes in, George, and I don't know if you mind me talking about it, but false faith is trying to ignore or deny what the reality is. You can't really have faith if you're not recognizing, right, the struggle and the challenge that is there. And so you get this false faith when people are like, no, I'm not really sick, or no, that's not really happening, or I'm just going to ignore it or not speak about it and it's going to be okay. Then that's not really faith. Your faith can't be activated. Your faith really can't be activated unless you acknowledge the struggle. And so I allowed myself time to just sit in all of the questions that always come up with cancer. How long do I have? What do I want my life to be? Am I living it in the way that I have said I wanted to live it from the first time? And then how do I want to live this out? And for me, it is, one, recognizing the pain of the struggle, dealing with mortality, but also recognizing that that there has been so much we've been given, and if I'm gonna fight, I'm gonna fight strong. I'm gonna fight hard, and the fight is getting up every day and saying that death and the thought of my mortality, if I died, that would really be okay. I know where I'm going. I know what I have a strong faith even in that, but I'm not ready necessarily to die.
So there's the two of them, right?
Yes.
I'm prepared, but I ain't ready yet. Thank you for sharing your faith journey with us here on Inspiration for the Nation. The final day, Imani, faith, The 7 Principles of Kwanzaa, Inspiration for the Nation.